Okay, I think we have liftoff. Looks like, yeah. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. We are on.
Yes, welcome to the Sacred Microdose podcast. Is that what
Yeah,
we're calling it, Amanda?
that sounds good to me for now until we're called something differently. We'll keep it at that. Yeah. My name is Amanda, and I am partnering with Grizz here at the Sacred Microdose, and I've been working with adults for about 15 years, achieving goals and living their life's purpose and finding deeper meaning. And in the last several years, I've really leaned into psychedelics and supporting both my own healing, my own significant healing, and the healing of other people, specifically moms. So hello, Microdosing Moms Facebook group. We're so excited to be broadcasting this live directly to you. So whether you're here live or watching it later, we are excited to help you on this journey.
Yeah, can you hear any feedback? I know it's just kind of informal podcast here. I didn't know if maybe someone joined and there's like maybe a TV or a radio in the background, but I heard a little feedback and I didn't know if it was coming from me.
I don't hear anything, although my husband is in the other room on a work call, so I do apologize if that provides any distraction whatsoever. The joys of modern working from home when everyone's just at home.
So yeah, I'm Grizz, and I've been working with plant medicine for about 6 years in a ceremonial setting. So we work with the indigenous out of the Amazon rainforest, and we hold sacred ceremonies here in Kentucky, in North Carolina, a lot of the southern part of the U.S. And so yeah, we're excited to get into sharing our expertise on the topic of dosage, and especially trusting sources that you may be buying from. And so we're going to get into that and more. Amanda, can you remind me, can people leave comments, or can people ask questions on this, or
So yeah, good question. So YouTube, we should get comments directly through the streaming platform. Facebook is trickier to work with the streaming. So I do have the live broadcast open here. I'll check it periodically, but comments do seem to come through only intermittently. So I will keep an eye out. I'll check, and if things do come through, we'll answer it the best that we can. We did get a lot of really great questions leading up to this group. I've been talking to a lot of moms in the last couple days, getting questions from them and concerns, and also just a lot of what we'll be talking about today is based out of all of the work that I've been doing with moms and supporting them in some of the common questions and themes that are coming up where we can provide some support.
Awesome.
Yeah. So last week we did the deep dive into all of the different ranges of dosing when we're talking about psilocybin, from the macro, the really big, life-changing, extreme consciousness altering dose, all the way down to the micro of microdosing and everything in between. So it was really a wonderful conversation. And I know I got a lot of really great feedback as far as really kind of shedding some light on what it is like to take psilocybin, and for what purposes might you want to be utilizing those different dose ranges. And so today we're going to continue that conversation, because I was extremely ambitious last week and thought we'd cover all of the things, but in the interest of keeping these episodes at an hour or less, we decided to table it there. So that conversation is bookended really around all the dosing, which is great. It'll be a resource that's available for those who need it. And today we're going to carry on that conversation and talk specifically about various topics around microdosing, such as the dose, the true microdose range and recommendations. I know we talked about that last week, but today we're going to broaden the container for that conversation a little bit more. We're also going to talk about buying them online. We have a lot of people that are running into some pitfalls and challenges. So we are going to talk just about safety practices to support yourself in navigating in the safest way possible out there. And then also just some other, microdosing specific topics, like how often to take your microdose. Should you microdose while you're taking antidepressants? These are all very common issues and questions that we come into. So, well, let's dive in with the first topic, and it's kind of a bridge from our conversation last week where we focused on dose ranges. So when we're talking about a microdose, we are talking about starting at as low as 50 milligrams, which is 0.05 of a gram. And to put that into context, a recreational dose is like maybe around 1 gram or higher. So this is 0.05 of 1 gram. So a very, very small amount.
Hey, Amanda,
Yes.
I thought it was really interesting, just some of the information you shared, because you talk to a lot of the moms, a lot more of them than I do. And I was really surprised when you told me that several of the moms you talked to were buying microdoses, and the amounts that they were advertising the microdose for. And so could you share, I think you have the specific numbers or a roundabout better than I do, but can you just share, and it probably leads into some of the things we're talking about as far as knowing your source and trusting your source. But could you just share for some of the listeners some of the doses, the amount that's being sold and advertised as a microdose?
Yeah, I've had a surprising number of conversations this week with moms who have ordered, capsules or gummies or something online, and they send me a screenshot, and their capsules or gummies are like 300 or more milligrams. One mom was taking 500 milligrams, and that was sold to her as a microdose. And
so that's 0.5, right? 0.5
correct.
Or
That's
0.3.
0.5. It's 0.3 or 0.5 is what we're talking about, that these women have found and were sold to them as a microdose. And, what we're talking about, a true microdose is 0.05 of a gram. So 50 milligrams versus 300 or 500. And, the reason that's disturbing for me or problematic, well, it's a couple of reasons, really. If what they're getting is true psilocybin, then a 500 milligram or half a gram dose, if they're thinking they're doing a microdose, right, and they're taking it with their morning smoothie and wanting to go about their day, they're going to be in for an uncomfortable day, really, because at that load, that's kind of what we were talking about last week, in that in between range where it can induce a lot of anxiety, some uncomfortable body load, right? You might feel stoned. Well, you at half a gram, you will feel something for sure. And it's problematic because these are moms, right, who are needing to go about their day and do mom things and carry through all their responsibilities, and they're getting these doses. And from a safety perspective, it's alarming, because if you're taking half a gram and then you have to take your kids to school, that is not something you should be doing on half a gram, right? On 50 milligrams, 0.05, yes, you can absolutely do that. But on half a gram, no way. You should not be operating heavy machinery, nor should you be the sole person responsible for little human safety, right?
Mm-hmm. And just a disclaimer for Amanda and I, we're by no means giving people a pass and clearing someone to drive on medicine. However, um, in our experience, you should not feel the microdose. And so, just a disclaimer that if something were to happen or you were to get into an accident, um, you know, we're not saying, we don't want it to come back on us that we told you to drive on this medicine and it caused an accident. But with that being said, the microdose, like Amanda said, you should not feel anything. It should not alter your driving ability. It should just really soften and just improve the day. It'll soften your edges, right, and make you help you respond in more loving way, right? So again, it should not alter anything to where you can't drive or like she said, go about your day.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Grizz. And on that same note, I definitely encourage all of you who are listening and maybe considering trying a microdosing regimen to take it on a day where you do not have to do any of those kinds of things. Take it on a day where you don't have to drive anywhere or somebody else can drive, where you're not the sole person responsible, because even though, it's at 50 milligrams isn't going to affect you in any significant manner, for some people, they may feel it a little bit. And you want to know where you are with that before you are ingesting anything that could potentially, impact your ability to make safe choices, or your reflex when you are needing to navigate, say, driving. But yes, no, we are not advocating taking mushrooms and driving. No way. No how. Don't do that. However, at a low enough dose, you are able to do the things that you normally would do because you're not, your cognitive functioning is not altered in any way in that respect.
Yeah, and for the sake of our viewers, we'll get more into the content and the topic here, but we'll plug our mentorship, I'm sure, throughout this podcast. But I just want to say our mentorship is something that we share a lot of these insights and tips where we guide you. And this, again, is more of a public forum. So a lot of our statements are maybe more general, but in our mentorship, we get into the specifics where we coach you on starting. If you're just getting into this space, like Amanda said, we're going to coach you and guide you to start microdosing on a day where you don't have anything to do, right? And so I just wanted to share that. So a lot of things we might say in this podcast are more general. And so, if you join our Facebook group or if you have more specific questions, feel free to post them, wherever you're watching this, and we'll respond accordingly. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The mentorship is really a great way to receive the support, the richer guidance to help you navigate and get started and really take it to a deeper level. Because when we're talking about microdosing in this context, we're talking about it from a healing perspective, right? If you're thinking about microdosing to, feel better or reduce your anxiety or reduce depression or repair, trauma patterning in your nervous system, all of that is part of the healing conversation. And that is where we are focusing, is on that healing perspective, supporting you in moving to a more plant-based alternative for healing. So with that, the recommendation for that is to start at 50 milligrams, the very, very small amount. And also in that context, you want to pair that microdose with the healing work that you're doing. So whether you're in some type of therapy, or maybe you're an EMDR, or you're working with a somatic therapist or a coach, or you're in our mentorship where we focus on meta consciousness and healing from that bigger consciousness perspective. Whatever you're doing, you do need to do something alongside your microdose, because the difference between microdosing for healing versus taking, maybe Western medications for healing is really about the idea of managing your symptoms, which is more of a Western trend, right? You're managing your symptoms versus kind of allowing your soul and your psyche to do the healing work that it's designed to do, that it will do on its own. And so the work in this sense supports you in shifting your perspective and your perception in order to create that healing dynamic within you.
It's kind of like getting out of our own way, isn't it? Kind of helps us get
For
out of
sure.
our own way. Let, all the blocks and the patterns, the negative beliefs that are holding us back. I just feel like the medicine really softens a lot of these things going on in our head. And sometimes it doesn't get rid of it fully, but it just softens it enough to where you can start reacting different. And I feel like that builds new connections, new neural pathways in your brain that connect to a whole lot of other new patterns and positive ways to react. So
Yeah. And Grizz, I just read this research study that I found fascinating. So they found that psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, that psilocybin actually slows the blood flow to our amygdala, which is amazing. The amygdala is the sensor in our brain that tells us danger, threat, right? It kind of creates a cascade of reactions in our whole body. And when you are triggered by something, right? When you're triggered by something and your body has this visceral response, or you have an angry reaction or something happen, your response when you're under stress is because of what your amygdala is telling the rest of your brain. And that's creating this whole body experience. And when we're talking about trauma, specifically, the amygdala is like on high alert at all times, or a lot of the time. And it can be very difficult for people to override that, because that's the first kind of data point that we get, and it informs everything else. And so when you feel like your emotions are running out of control and you're just on this ride and you don't feel like you can control it, it's probably because your amygdala is overactive. And so this research that showed that psilocybin slows the blood flow to the amygdala, it makes so much sense why it feels like it softens the edges, right? It makes sense why it feels like, I've often described it as the space between the trigger and your response, because it does. It physically creates that space via time, because it's not an instantaneous response. And that little bit of difference allows us to have that shift in perspective, allows us to create new emotional habits, allows us to shift the perspective and move to a different part of our consciousness in order to create different ripples and override the gravity from whatever trigger might have created the cascade of effects. So that study was super interesting and enlightening, and it makes sense. It makes sense. But that being said, one more thing. 50 milligrams is enough to do that. You do not need to feel stoned from the psilocybin in order to create that reduction in blood flow to the amygdala, in order to create the neurogenic properties, the neuroplasticity, to open the critical learning period in our brain. You do not need a large amount in order to do that, which is truly amazing to me. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
yeah, I'm so grateful for the medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And so that's why it's so helpful when you're pairing it with the work that works, right? talk therapy can be very helpful, but if you've done years of talk therapy, it might be time to try something else, right? Something more body based. Whether it's I've had luck with EMDR and with other somatic principles, and in the mentorship we focus a lot on the body, and because the body and the brain, it's all one unit, and everything is kind of working in conjunction. It's not a dichotomy, right? We are kind of one energetic manifestation, and so looking at us as a holistic energetic being is the healing approach that we take in the mentorship. And while you're doing the work, whatever it is, the work that you're doing with your microdosing protocol, you want to track your experience. You'll track things like your mood or any specific emotional goals you have, maybe around reactivity, and anything else that you're wanting to see improvements in your life. You'll want to track those, because day in and day out, it might be difficult to know if you're making overall improvements. But if you can look back at a week or 2 weeks and see quantitatively how you're trending over time, then you can make really informed decisions as far as where to go with your dose, whether you want to increase it to 75 milligrams or 100 milligrams, or even reduce it to 25 milligrams. This is where you're going to really have an edge in finding your sweet spot. And in the mentorship, Grizz and I really hone in on supporting people in finding that sweet spot. But it certainly isn't rocket science, and you can do it as long as you are tracking and supporting yourself with understanding where you are and what that feels like, and also clarity on where you want to go.
Yeah, the mentorship, the module one, the first one that you posted, I know we don't officially start until later today, but I started working on the first module, and I've noticed a significant impact in just working on that first little part there. And so I'm excited.
That's awesome, Grizz. Yay. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah. I put a lot of care and thought into and research into putting everything together. So yeah, I'm excited to share it with everybody and walk along the journey.
It's great because I've never really gone through a program like this, so I'm excited myself. It's always been just other things that I was going through, or different programs I was doing at the time. But I'm really excited to get into this, because I noticed yesterday when I was working on that first module, like the medicine taps you into this other world that I feel like is the truth. It's kind of what's going on in the background. And so the medicine allows me to tap into this like magical side. And when I pair it with the work that you have in that module, it just I feel like it energizes and really gives life to this new direction that we're trying to go. So I think I chose, clarity and purpose. There was a couple different words we were supposed to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really good to help with my dream and where I wanted to go with what I'm doing, with my purpose. And so just like aligning the purpose, and then you're in that vibration with the medicine, and it feels so good, and it just energizes that to where, I don't know, the law of attraction, it just brings it so much faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll get more into the law of attraction too a little bit later on in this foundations program within the mentorship too, as far as the frequency in which we vibrate, the law of resonance, where it will attract and merge with similar frequencies, and we go into the quantum mechanics of that a little bit too later on. So it's all very exciting. Yeah, well, good. Yeah, for sure. And that's where the work that you do with the medicine is so important, because you want to make sure that what you're doing is carrying your healing forward, right? Integration with this is pivotal, If you're not doing integration with your microdosing protocol, you are doing yourself a disservice. You are selling yourself short. It is essential to healing, because you're not just managing symptoms with this, right? You're shifting your whole perspective from our Western culture where we manage symptoms, right? We're shifting from that into actual deep healing. One thing, a little play on words, but there's that phrase, feel it to heal it, right? You have to feel it to heal it. Well, in this case, when we're talking about the mushrooms, feeling it versus healing it, right? A lot of people think that if they can't feel the dose, that it's not working. And that's not true. The truth is, it's not feeling the mushrooms. It's being open to that space that they are facilitating in your brain and in your internal processes. It's building awareness of your own internal landscape and starting to see choice where maybe it was automatic habit in the past, and feeling empowered to be able to make that choice and create new healing pathways for yourself. So when we're talking about feeling it to heal it, we're not talking about feeling the medicine. We're talking about feeling your emotions. And the psilocybin, the mushrooms, will support you in being able to feel that emotion, lean in to that emotion, and build these amazing awarenesses that weren't maybe that accessible to you before. You weren't aware that they were even there. So you do have to feel it to heal it, but you need to feel the emotions and not necessarily the medicine.
Nice. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did I just go on a tangent about
nothing? It makes sense to me.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I've been talking. Go ahead.
I was just going to shout buyer beware when it comes to just kind of transitioning into trusting your sources with who you're purchasing online. And we can skim through this. We've talked a lot about it, but there's all kinds of stories. I mean, Amanda, you've had a lot of them. You've shared a lot with me too, but I was surprised when I heard that people were selling mushrooms and these were larger doses and people weren't really feeling anything. And so I'm only assuming that it was not real psilocybin. And so you have that. You just have, we talked about it on our first episode a little bit, but knowing who is growing your mushrooms and the intentions and the prayers that go into that. Is this just some random person or a factory that they're just turning these things out? Or is it someone like us that it's a family affair? We sing to the medicine, and we sing songs and prayers to the medicine and put very positive intentions into it. And when we're working with moms in the mentorship, we'll even put in a specific intention for what that mom is trying to work on or heal. And so you don't get that, when you go to the Walmarts of on, www.magicmushrooms.com and just order it. So
I don't think that's a real website, so you can stop searching for it. No, it's a real thing. The thing is people are wanting this medicine. People are wanting to choose plants over pills. People are wanting a more holistic option that's safe and effective, right? There's a lot of plant-based options out there that aren't really that effective. This is holy buckets. This is so effective. It can be. I mean, it's certainly not for everybody, but it is very powerful, and you do not need much of it for it to be effective for you. So it's understandable that people are feeling almost like this desperation or this urgency to find the medicine, to find a safe place to get it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of vendors out there that are capitalizing on this and either not shipping anything at all. I heard one scam where somebody, actually, I've heard this from a few different people. This was really going around for a little bit. It probably still is, where they would pay like $100 or whatever for a product, and then a couple weeks later, a week later, a couple days later, they get this email saying, "Oh, it's stuck in customs, and now we need $1,000 in order to release it." And it's just, I mean, people are falling for this stuff, and they're getting taken advantage of, and it's a shame, because it should not be this hard to get. It should be available, particularly in these small doses. And it's vendors like that, or it's vendors that are selling half a gram and calling it a microdose that can hurt the movement, right? It hurts the movement because either A, people are getting stoned and doing things they shouldn't be doing while they're on this medicine, thinking that it was just going to be a microdose, or B, they're not putting anything in it at all, or putting synthetic stuff, and it's not going to be as effective. And both of those things are harmful for the individual and the psychedelic movement as a whole.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pull up a couple questions that I think this is, you made me think of a couple of questions that were in the chat. A lot of the moms were asking, like, where do I get the medicine? How do I buy the medicine?
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't watch our first episode, we have a church, Na Teresa, and it's the Church of Nature. The indigenous tribes from the Amazon rainforest, they encouraged us to start the church in order for them to have protection when they come up to the US and hold sacred ceremonies with their plant medicine, the ayahuasca. But it also gives us protection working in this mentorship with the sacred mushroom. And so when you join our mentorship, you're also joining our church, Na Teresa, and as a member, when you follow the guidelines and you sign up as a member, you're signing that you're going to uphold these values that are going to protect us. And so if we do this the right way, we are going to be protected through the Religious Freedom Act. And just a couple of weeks ago, there was a church, the Eagle Condor Church, and it was a landmark case against the DEA where they fell back on the Religious Freedom Act. And so they work with the indigenous just like we do. And so there's a lot of parallels to what we're doing here with the Eagle and Condor Church that just won a landmark case that's really paving the way for people like Amanda and I. So, you're not only protected by going through us, through the church, but you're also receiving very sacred medicine that is connected into these lineages that go all the way down to the heart of the rainforest. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, because a lot of moms were asking, how do we buy? Where do we buy? And so there's lots of places that you can buy, but I feel like in my heart, we're doing it the right way, and it's going to be the safest way for you as a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. Even it wasn't that long ago when I was trying to find safe access to mushrooms myself. And I mean, it was a year before I really found anything that I felt comfortable purchasing from. Now, however, I think with all of the rolling decriminalization that's happening in various states and even at the city level, there's a lot more opportunity out there. And unfortunately, with that, there's also a lot of vendors who have, unethical intentions, and they're taking advantage of people who are wanting healing. And, it's it's really too bad. And that is one of the reasons why I made the Facebook group, the Microdosing Moms Facebook group, and why I'm so involved in making sure that everyone who gets in is a real mom and a real person and not some scammer, because I don't want people to be taken advantage of when their intentions are pure. Their intentions are to find healing. And with the experiences that I've had, my own healing experiences using plant medicines, I am so passionate about helping others do this in a safe way. So passionate about keeping everybody safe, with the substance and with access. Right? We want to first and foremost make sure nobody's doing anything that's going to compromise or jeopardize their safety or anyone that they're responsible for. And and that is another reason why you want to start at such a low dose at 50 milligrams, because you're going to have plenty of time to titrate up and see where your sweet spot is. But I will tell you, many people do find that very low dose, 50 milligrams or so, is their sweet spot, because they feel no perceived effects, but yet they're slowing that blood flow to their amygdala, right? And they're feeling better. They're working through things. They're creating new neurological and emotional habits, and it's working.
And we do have an option for the moms that are asking if they can just buy the medicine. And so if you don't want to do the full mentorship, we have 2 mentorship options. But if you don't want to go that route, we do have an option to where you can just buy the medicine only, and work through us in the church. But if that's you, just reach out to Amanda or I. Just send us a message and we can talk about the details of how that works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, another big question. I would say most of the moms in our group are either currently on antidepressants or wanting to taper off of their antidepressants and switch to a plant-based. Now, this is not medical advice, so please do not take this as medical advice. I am only somebody who has done it myself. I weaned off antidepressants a few years ago, and now I only do microdosing on a protocol. Like, I follow a schedule. So with that being said, this is a huge case-by-case situation, right? Where you want to talk to your medical team. I will say nowadays, a lot of psychiatrists and even psychologists are open to the idea of microdosing. They can't professionally endorse it. They can't, recommend it for liability reasons. However, if you go to them and you say, I'm thinking about doing this, they should be able to advise you medically about any potential contraindications. The biggest issue, if you're on particularly an SSRI, is something called serotonin syndrome or serotonin toxicity, and that can be deadly. So you do want to be careful if you are taking antidepressants, because you do not want to be in a situation where you're making yourself sick. Now, that being said, the studies on serotonin syndrome were done with people taking large doses, so macro doses of psilocybin, and also on their antidepressants. So, and even in that instance, it was rare. I don't think there are any cases of anyone microdosing and on an SSRI and getting serotonin syndrome. But because there is, a potential contraindication, it's very important to be aware of where you are with that. So I do recommend, if possible, wean off SSRIs before starting microdosing. Definitely before doing any macro dosing. You do not want to take a large dose of psilocybin while you're taking an SSRI. But again, with your specific situation, you want to talk to your medical team, because if there's a reason why you shouldn't come off of your antidepressants, they're going to be able to tell you that, not anyone else.
So Amanda, could you tell us how often to dose? And I think something that comes up is, how long do I have to microdose?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to do this the rest of my life? And I want to emphasize have to, right? Like, do I have to do this? For me, I don't say that, like, it's like I don't know if you've probably heard this, like, you have to go to work or you get to go to work? And so I get to participate in this sacred medicine, right? Like, um, I'm I'm just so grateful that I have an opportunity to work with this medicine, and I don't feel addicted to it, but I don't want to stop working with this medicine because I'm seeing all of the doors continue to open in front of me in my life. It's not 100% all joy all the time, right? But there's a lot more of it working with the plant medicine. And so that's all I'll say. But yeah,
Mhm.
how often to dose and how long should we be doing this?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so some people are surprised to find out that there are specific schedules to follow when it comes to microdosing. So there are two main recommendations by the two men who are kind of considered to be the fathers of microdosing.
Mhm.
The first one is the Fadiman protocol, and so that is where you would take your microdose for 4 days in a row, and then you take 3 days off. So 4 days in a row, the medicine kind of compounds over those 4 days. And then those 3 days off are for what's called a tolerance break and an integration break. So that one is I like that one because of the compounding effect. I think that there's value in that when we're talking about neuroplasticity and creating that space for emotional change. And then the other protocol is developed by Paul Stamets, and that is where you take your dose on day one, and then you take the next 2 days off, and then you dose again on day four. So that is built on the premise that microdosing doesn't just work on the day that you microdose, but it also is working the second day. And I'll tell you, oftentimes on this particular protocol, people feel better on the second day than they do even on their dose day. So there are after effects and afterglow, it's called sometimes, from the microdosing. And then that third day is kind of your tolerance break or your integration break before you dose again on that fourth day. And you just do that over and over again. So those are kind of the two main ones. I will say after a time, it does seem like most people move to a more intuitive schedule because you start to get to know your body. You start to get to know your felt sense as far as what you're feeling, where you are, when it is a good dose day. I have primarily moved to intuitive dosing. There's some weeks where I take it once, some weeks where I take it 3 or 4 times. It just kind of depends on what I'm doing, what my goals are, and what I'm working on emotionally, what my focus is. And oh, and breaks. Yes, it is important occasionally to build in a longer break, like a month or 2 months. I just took a break over the holidays in mid-December to mid-January because I felt ready. My body was telling me like it's time. And cognitively, I wouldn't have chosen the holidays to take a break because it's a very stressful time. However, my intuition was saying, hey, it's time. And so I did. And then when I went back to it in mid-January, I was feeling really good about that intuition as well. And the question, how long, as far as a bigger time picture, how long will you need to microdose? That is definitely different for everybody. And it just depends on what you're working through and what your goals are. Some people microdose for 3 months and feel great and never do it again. Some people microdose for, a decade. I mean, it just kind of depends on what you're working on. And, but you will not develop any reliance on the medicine. You will not develop an addiction, or you won't develop the need to take it. In fact, there's a lot of research that has been done and is currently being done around how psilocybin helps with addiction. So it's a non-addictive substance, which means you're not going to get addicted to it. You're not going to feel the need to have to take it, which is also another quite amazing aspect of this medicine.
Yeah, I don't know the half life of the medicine as from a physical on your body, but on those off days that you mentioned, I feel like the medicine does something on an energetic level and a spiritual level that you'll find when you work with this medicine and you work with us, and especially in the container and the mentorship, just connecting with nature and this magical side of life, you'll find that when you take the medicine, I have found in my experience that it's the energy is like with you for life. You know, you could take it one time, and especially like with ayahuasca, one a lot of times the spirit of the medicine will connect to you before you put it in your body. And so just kind of to your point on those off days, I think the medicine is always working with us, in us, whether we take it that day or we don't take it that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that for sure. Yeah, well, so before we start bringing this episode to a close, I just want to really drive one super important point home. And that is, if you are currently microdosing and you're feeling some type of adverse reaction, right? Maybe you're anxious, you're feeling extra tired, maybe you're dehydrated, maybe you're feeling like overwhelmed, your emotions just feel really amplified. I encourage you, this is counterintuitive, I know, but I encourage you to cut your dose in half. Okay? Because it's possible and likely you're in that in-between stage that is notorious for creating uncomfortable symptoms. What you
Whew,
want is to
me
be
too.
under that threshold of body load, under the threshold of perception, of perceptual effect of the medicine, so that way you can still build your own emotional freedom, right? But not feel the bad effects. Because I know, there's some days where I do intentionally choose that in between dose, and we talked about that last time. But most of the time, I don't want to go there because it's not an everyday dose. That's a very specific instance, right? It's a highly intentional instance where I'm like, I have a strong intention around what I'm doing, and I have strong methodology around how I'm wanting to grow that day. But with these smaller doses, then I'm not needing to dive in as ruthlessly, I guess is the way to put it.
I was gonna say even someone experienced like and myself with larger doses and ceremonial doses, I would much rather do 1 gram or 3 grams or 2 grams than that like 0.5 or like that 0.7. There's that in between dose that I think a lot of moms fall into that trap, and then they get scared and don't ever want to come back. And I don't blame them, because if I was to experience that in between feeling, I wouldn't want to come back either. And so, working again with somebody like Amanda and I, we're going to be able to guide you to where you're in good hands. And
Mm-hmm.
we've been there. We've we've done this and had those bad experiences to where you don't have to have that. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, learn from our mistakes. Yeah. No, I really cannot tell you. I've had so many conversations with moms where, I tell them, "Hey, try taking like way less than what you're taking." And they ask me, "Really? But then I won't feel anything." And I say, "Well, you're right, and that could be a good thing." And then a couple of weeks later, they come back to me and they're messaging me saying like, "Oh my gosh, Amanda, that made all the difference. I feel like it's finally working."
yeah, that's great.
So yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot of really amazing things today, Grizz. I'm excited about our conversation. I hope that it's been helpful for everyone listening live and anyone who's listening after the fact. And if you are curious about the mentorship, I'll be sure to put the links in both the YouTube video and in the show notes of the podcast, so we can make sure that everyone who wants safe access to this medicine and holistic support is able to do so.
Thank you all. Thanks, Amanda.
Yep. Have a good day, everybody.